Good morning, everyone. Ooh, I'm getting my glasses thing. I've gone over 50, and I need these glasses now. It doesn't work like it used to. But good morning, everyone. Again, welcome to this non-degree credentials convening. First, I'm going to thank all of you for taking time out of your day to come together and engage in this important issues. Many of you in person, some of you virtually. Some of you traveling from various parts of the country, take the time away from your families and important work. I want to acknowledge the sacrifice. I also want to acknowledge all the work put in by the Joint Center staff, particularly the workforce development team, Kayla and Gabby, who you will hear from later. I haven't introduced myself yet. I am Gidra Fasante Mohammed, president of the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies. Founded in 1970, the Joint Center is the oldest public policy institute designed to advocate for African Americans. Our mission, which is up on the slide here, is to provide compelling and actionable policy solutions to eradicate persistent and evolving barriers to the full freedom of Black people in America. Our mission is as important today as it's ever been. With increasing signs of an economic slowdown, Black unemployment most recently doubling that of white unemployment at a rate of 7.5%, and moves to cut workforce development investments that had promised of moving Black Americans into full employment enjoyed by other communities. It is time to rededicate and refocus on our workforce efforts. I'm excited to hear Benardi's experience of the on-the-ground leaders as to the current state and possible advancements of workforce programs. Let's go. Oh, great. As the slide shows, our workforce team has recently produced three reports that center Black workers in emerging industries. We have the shift in the narrative on industrial policy opportunities for genuine economic mobility and good jobs for Black communities. 5 principles for equitable non-degree pathways, which I believe we're talking about today. And then the forthcoming, a place-based industrial policy brief. But to help us get started today, we have the opportunity to hear from Representative Lucy McBath of the House and Education Workforce Committee. It is by working with our national representatives and local leaders that we'll be able to meet today's challenge. So let us now hear from Representative McBath. And thank you all again for coming out this morning.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for being here this morning. I am Congresswoman Lucy McBath, and I represent Metro Atlanta in the United States Congress. I'm honored to be invited by the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies to speak about the work I do to uplift and support economic success for American workers. It's a joy to be here with leaders, advocates, and change makers who share a vision for a stronger, more inclusive economy. The work you do is essential, not just to our workforce system, but to the future of our country. As many of you know, I serve on the House Committee on Education and Workforce, and in that role, I have seen firsthand the urgency of this moment. Across our nation, industries are transforming because of historic investments like the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the CHIPS and Science Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act. These investments are creating good jobs in communities across America. We must make sure that workers of color are not left behind in this transformation. For too long, Black workers have faced barriers to opportunity, locked out of industries, excluded from decision-making, and overlooked when it comes to training and advancement. That is why non-degree credentials are so critical right now. They open new doors to high-quality jobs, and they help ensure that skills, not just degrees, are valued in the hiring process. We are seeing more employers embrace skills-based hiring, which is an important step forward. We need to continue to build systems that not only prepare workers for these new opportunities, but also dismantle the structural barriers that have long held back those who come from underserved communities. Unfortunately, our current workforce data does not tell the full story. Many federal laws, like the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, do not require training providers to track program-level outcomes by race or to include all non-degree credentials. That means We lack the data needed to understand the Black experience in non-degree pathways, and without that, inequities go unaddressed. The stakes are high. As these historic federal investments flow into emerging industries, we face a choice between the same outdated structures that squash hopes and dreams for too many of our friends and neighbors, or build new pathways that support economic mobility and encourage opportunity for all. I know which option we must take. The Joint Center's work points us in the right direction. This is the vision I hold as well. A workforce system that reflects the full talent and diversity of our nation. A system where every worker has a fair chance to succeed. A system that ensures the jobs created through public and private investment are truly accessible to all. So, as we begin today's discussions, I encourage you to think boldly. Think about the workers in your communities who are eager to contribute. Think about the families who will thrive when access to opportunity is no longer determined by race, zip code, or access to a degree. Together, we can build a workforce system that meets this moment in our country. Thank you.
Please join me in welcoming to the stage Dr. Kayla Elliott, the Director of Workforce Policy at the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies.
Good morning again. Many thanks to Deidre and to Representative McBath and her team for providing comments, grounding us in the importance of this moment. I'm Kayla, the Director of Workforce Policy here at the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies. I'm here to give what we call in the Black church in the South the occasion, right? Like why we are here today and what we are talking about. And so for the last 15 years or so, states, funders, advocates have really been pushing for more adults to increase post-secondary attainment. And in that time period, Black Americans have increased attainment almost by 10%, due in large part to the acquisition and attainment of non-degree credentials, shorter term credentials that don't meet the qualifications for a traditional associate or post-secondary or bachelor degree, and instead award certificates, badges, micro-credentials, apprenticeships, and industry certifications. In fact, Black learners are more likely to earn certificates than their peers, and certificates are a third of the post-secondary credentials that Black learners earn, compared to 1 in 5 for white learners. Today, interest in non-degree credentials is increasing due in part to the investments that Deidre and Representative McBath mentioned, but also in part to the recently passed Workforce Pell Bill, which will expand Pell eligibility down to programs that are as short as 8 to 15 weeks instead of the traditional 16 weeks or longer. And so though federal data on these programs is limited, through independent scholarship and nonprofit databases, we're able to see that some of the same inequities that exist in traditional credential programs also exist in non-degree credentials. For example, Black adults who hold a very short-term certificate earn significantly less than white adults with a similar credential. And in 2020, Black workers who held only a certification made a mere $183 more in median weekly earnings than their Black peers who had neither a certification or a license. So for all intents and purposes, they're getting about $9,500 more a year based on someone who may only have a high school diploma. And so if we want these degrees to be better connected to exactly what Representative McBath talked about. We need to do a better job, and that's what we've been able to do today. And despite these inequities, Black Americans do see value in non-degree credentials. In one study, 71% of those surveyed found value in their credential, as opposed to only 41% of white respondents. So there's opportunity here, there's value here, absolutely. But there's some fundamental disconnects between non-degree programs, the needs of employers, and the economic mobility and power of Black workers. We can go to the next slide. This spring, my team had the honor of assembling and working alongside 13 experts in the field on our non-degree credentials advisory board, many of whom are joining us here today in the room and some of whom are online. These students, scholars, and leaders work across many relevant roles and sectors, including national associations, state and regional workforce development agencies, training providers, and research organizations. We're incredibly grateful to the Annie E. Casey Foundation for their support, which facilitated the inclusion of our two awesome student advisory board members to share their firsthand perspectives with instructors, programs, and employers. The advisory board took on the collective task and challenge of identifying equitable practices to ensure non-degree credentials are effective pathways for Black workers within these policies and determining the key principles for their success. We grappled with key program characteristics such as quality, transparency, and stackability, and those conversations gave birth to 5 principles. Next slide, please. Joint Center Senior Analyst Dr. Gabrielle Smith-Finney will share those 5 principles for equitable non-degree pathways with some time for Q&A next. After that, we'll hear firsthand from Danny, who's joining us virtually, Ajir and Ira, our 2 student board members and a local UDC student, in conversation with Andrew Crow, founder of the New American Manufacturing Renaissance at the Manufacturing Institute. After a short break, Dr. Mashonda Smith, who's Dean of Division of Workforce Development and Lifelong Learning at UDC, will moderate a panel with Michelle Burris, who's a fellow at the Century Foundation, and Courtney Squirewell, Innovation Team Director at Bloomberg Center for Public Innovation at Johns Hopkins. And rounding out the day, Nikisha Ricks-Pettyjohn, Senior Fellow, Workforce Development at National Skills Coalition, will moderate an action lab with all of you who are here with us in the room, so be prepared to participate. And we will close out the day with lunch. Any questions? Well, we are in for a treat. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kayla Elliott, for your introduction to today. Now, please welcome to the stage Dr. Gabrielle Smith-Finney, who will introduce our next session on non-degree credentials and student voice.
But so happy you all are here. Again, my name is Dr. Gabrielle Smith-Finney, and I'm a senior policy analyst here at the Joint Center. I just want to thank you for attending. This is such a labor of love, and we know we're going to have a great conversation today. Thank you for Kayla for kind of teeing up the discussion. I will be talking about the report that we will be developing, and it will be forthcoming soon. 5 principles for equitable non-degree pathways. This brief shares insights from the advisory board, overviews principles to center equity in non-degree credential programs and pathways, and underscores how these principles can help non-degree credentials translate into sustained economic mobility for Black workers. This brief is also part of our new series, Centering Black Workers in Emerging Industries, which examines how Black communities can access equitably thriving and high-growth industries, including manufacturing, technology, and clean energy. I'm eager to provide an overview of the brief today. You should see an executive summary and the 5 principles on your table for reference. We also may have time for a brief Q&A, so please prepare your questions while I'm going through the content. So if you're ready, we're just going to jump right in. So on the screen, you see the 5 principles for equitable and non-degree pathways, which our advisory board took such great care of kind of identifying these equitable practices to ensure non-degree credentials are effective pathways for Black workers and learners within these policies, and then determine these key principles for their success. So I'll be going through each one by one. So first up, we have employer investment in training and credentialing. So the board highlighted how important employers and industry are in aligning non-degree credentials with jobs. Experts across the advisory board noted that employers often fail to list relevant certificates in job postings or overestimate their ability to train for technical skills, leading them to devalue formal credentials in the hiring process. Another board member emphasized the importance of having skin in the game through financial investments in non-degree credential programs to ensure employers are committed from training development to hiring. Leveraging these financial investments to provide an upskilling opportunity while also driving talent back into the organization is mutually beneficial for employers and prospective employees. So we have some recommendations which are listed on the screens. We are recommending employers fund, develop, and implement quality training credential programs that center learners and workers. By providing financial support, employers actively shape program outcomes and course development, leading to industry-aligned training and and a stronger workforce ultimately. Employer investment in training and credentials will increase transparency and create a direct pathway into employment for program completers. We believe with more employer investment in training and credential programs, employers can meet their hiring demands and learners and workers can have genuine upskilling opportunities that lead to economic advancement. For our next one, it is titled Addressing Learner Needs and Financial Realities. For non-degree credentials to be genuinely accessible for Black learners and workers, funding models and support systems must address the true cost of participation, which often extends far beyond tuition. Even in free tuition non-degree programs, exam fees, housing, childcare costs, and transportation can act as a barrier for learners and workers. A board member emphasized combining funding from multiple state and funding programs, such as the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, Workforce Pell, apprenticeship grants, and Perkins can optimize fundings to aid students. Addressing learner and worker needs and financial realities helps eliminate systemic barriers, provide targeted support, and improve outcomes for Black workers earning non-degree credentials. So we have some recommendations as well. Non-degree programs must provide holistic fiscal support for workers and learners. Holistic financial support helps eliminate barriers that impact learners and workers' access, persistence, and completion. Offering stipends, state-level grants, and funding streams to learners and workers will help meet their needs and financial realities, helping them take advantage of upskilling opportunities and new jobs. I'll move forward to our next principle, successful workforce development collaborations. The board continuously shared how integral collaboration is for successful workforce development initiatives. The most successful initiatives convene all stakeholders to align goals and create seamless pathways from training to employment. Multi-stake partnerships that act as connective tissue between industry, labor leaders, education, and government are vital to mitigate misalignment. Board members highlighted that having all the players in the room together is the core of a successful collaboration. Collaborative workforce development opportunities meet industry hiring needs and expand access for Black learners and workers. Examples of effective collaborative models include regional sector-based alliances, state-led alignment, credential guarantees, and city-level partnerships. We recommend states collaborate with industry, education, labor leaders, and other key stakeholders to create and implement workforce development initiatives. Convening all stakeholders can ensure diverse perspectives are represented, build trust, and improve coordination when implementing new workforce development initiatives that center workers and learners. Collaboration will also help to address challenges that arrive in rapidly evolving industries like manufacturing, technology, and clean energy. We'll move forward to our second to last one here, navigating data challenges and accountability. As we know, the current data infrastructure is inadequate to assess credential attainment, outcomes, and whether non-degree credentials create equitable economic mobility pathways. Additionally, current legislative efforts to prohibit DEI-related educational and data initiatives pose a significant threat to understanding and addressing racial disparities. Improving data availability is essential to assess whether non-degree credentials advance economic mobility for Black workers and help make data-informed career decisions. We recommend enrollment, completion, wage data post-completion, and other program-level data must be federally collected and disaggregated by race for all certifications, badges, apprenticeship, and other non-degree credential programs. States should also invest in advancing data analysis capabilities to adequately assess non-degree credential enrollment, retention, attainment, and economic outcomes post-completion. Disaggregated data helps hold post-secondary programs accountable for disproportionate enrollment, retention, and completion outcomes. Improving data infrastructure and having more publicly available data will help better identify equity gaps, reveal updates about labor market trends, enable policymakers to make evidence-based decisions, and aid learners and workers in making informed decisions about their economic and professional future. All right, for our last one here, implementing race-conscious strategies in a challenging climate. Advocates are developing innovative and resilient strategies to preserve equity in workforce development in a politically hostile climate to direct DEI initiatives. A board member highlighted, illustrating workforce development as a form of civic engagement helps all citizens become contributing members of society, reframes workforce development as a universally accepted goal. This civic framing also serves to empower learners, help them understand their value and contribution to the country. When engaging in conversations with stakeholders that might be resistant, some board members suggested focus on proxies for race, such as zip codes, rural populations, or at-risk groups to advance equity goals indirectly. We have some recommendations on the screen. Non-degree credentials program administrators and advocates need to center equity by crafting tailored messaging when developing outreach strategies for program enrollment, removing barriers of access that impact Black learners and workers, developing culturally responsive programming, and attributing value to non-traditional skills. These strategies promote equitable participation in workforce development opportunities to equip workers and learners for high growth and in-demand careers. As the Trump administration eliminates equitable initiatives, finding innovative ways to preserve equity and worker power in workforce development strategies is crucial for building a diverse manufacturing, clean energy, technology workforce, and just workforce as a whole. So these 5 principles in this brief provide a blueprint for realizing the promise of non-degree credentials for Black workers and learners. By putting these principles into practice, we can ensure non-degree credentials center Black learners and workers and become effective pathways for them to contribute to a stronger, more inclusive U.S. economy. I know that was a lot of content. We have a few minutes for Q&A. We have a mic runner that will be in the crowd for those who wish to ask a question. Please raise your hand. And we have our chat monitor as well. So if there is a online question, I can happily answer that as well. I don't know who wants to begin, or if all your questions have been answered thus far, that is also good. Hey.
It's on? Okay. Just wanted to ask, with the change in national politics, what have you, just wondering how has the corporate sector, what movement have we seen in corporate sector, just in general, about employer investment in training and credentials?
Yeah, so we've been looking at a lot of examples to even put in the brief about some successful workforce development partnerships. Obviously, we know these changes are very volatile and also very recent. So most of our examples that we included aren't necessarily in a politically hostile environment. I think a lot of those successful employer and workforce development partnerships really do support the learner from the training program all the way to hiring, giving them a linear pathway from training to employment, and also fiscal support and wraparound supports around the way. I think one example I can provide, Adidas has a seed program that they were doing for folks that were interested in getting to the Adidas company, and that they felt like that had different barriers that could prevent them from accessing employment. And so they created a program to sponsor folks to make sure that folks of color were able to access these opportunities. And so I think that support is instrumental. And again, that is one example. But I think we're still looking for some that are kind of consistent in this environment. I think there's just a lot of change happening fast. So if you have any other research, we're happy to provide that in the brief. But I think we're just kind of monitoring what the field is doing. And I think that's why assembling the advisory board was so important for us, to give real world examples, both across different regions, both that are doing lots of various programs and priorities. So I think they were helpful in providing diverse perspectives to include, but I think we're still on the hunt for things that are happening right now currently that we can kind of learn and glean from.
Hi, Jeremy Kelly from the Gates Foundation. I haven't had a chance to read the brief yet because it has been published, but Can you share your definition for a non-degree credential program? You heard you mention WIOA, but are there other ones?
Yes. So I would have to look at and give you a full definition of what is written in there. But we're thinking of non-degree programs as programs that are training programs that have a credential that can be a 1 to 3 credit, more of a training provider program that can be educationally led or a part of a educating or credential system. So just a training program that has a potential that gives a skill or has some type of credential at the end. That could be a certificate, that could be a badge. So I think I'm remembering most of it, but I'm happy to follow up with you after to get our direct definition. But I think we have learned from just the advisory board of sometimes one definition doesn't always include everything that, because non-degree credentials, that definition is very broad. So I think we kind of kept things a little bit broader for folks to identify. But I think in short, anything that has a credential that leads to a credential, whether that's a course or a training program. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
From the back of the room, I'm happy to add to that for sure. And so that was the kind of brief definition that I gave of programs that are now WIOA eligible under the traditional 16 weeks. So any credential that does not award a degree, an associate degree or a bachelor's degree, anything shorter term than that. So as Gabby mentioned, micro credentials, which can be 5 weeks, 3 weeks, badges, apprenticeships, certificates, industry certifications, etc., if that's helpful. Occupational licensing, yes. Yeah, absolutely.
How you doing? Trammell Howard Education Trust in Louisiana. Quick question. I was wondering if the advisory board or the report dealt with any findings around the stigma around non-degree credentials, because a lot of times the narrative, especially when you're talking to families, like everybody talks about the importance of getting a degree, but we miss opportunities for the non-degree pathway. So I was wondering if there were any findings around the stigma around non-degree pathways.
Yes, those findings aren't necessarily captured in length in the brief, but I'm sure you'll hear a lot of that today, and also segue into our student panel that may talk about some of those experiences. So I definitely would even recommend bringing that up to even the students that are in the room, because they can kind of answer that more directly. But that definitely was a conversation that was brought up. It is just not necessarily detailed as in length. But I think we're continuing to combat these narratives about education, the value of it. I think also with the lack of data, and then some of the data that is elevated is always not as positive too. We're continuing to kind of rewrite that story, and most specifically for Black learners and workers as well too.
And I would add again from the back of the room, not a part of this series. This series is exclusively our industrial policy series. We also have an upcoming report on career and technical education, and that was a major finding from many of the interviews that we did with instructors, state directors, researchers, et cetera. And one of the recommendations findings is very specifically around addressing career and technical education, workforce, degree credentials, anything that's quote unquote not traditional, not college, and the stigma there. That's actually very valid and based in like historical tracking into vocational education, and just doing a lot of understanding about what value and quality looks like, and changing narratives in conjunction with communities and families, because that's absolutely how it has to start for sure.
Yeah. I don't know if we have any questions online or if we're almost at time, but I definitely want to make room for the student panel coming up next. If there's not any questions, I see we are happy to transition up into the student panel, which will be hearing more about student voice. So I hope you have your questions ready for these brilliant scholars that'll be up on the stage next. And I think we have a formal announcement welcoming them to the screen. So thank you all for listening. I appreciate it. You're welcome.
What a great discussion. Now, on to our next session. Please welcome our hybrid student panel.
All right, y'all. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm excited about this panel right now. First, I want to introduce myself to you all, so you kind of get an idea of what this dude is doing up here with these amazing students, and like I'd like to call them superheroes. They've been through the very programs that we're talking about, and their experiences really matter. My name is Drew Crow. I'm a former teenage father and two-time felon from St. Louis, Missouri. I went from the jailhouse to the White House. I went from prison to MIT. I currently go around the United States on a tour called the New American Manufacturing Renaissance Tour, where I build out equitable solutions for people to get into manufacturing, specifically communities of color, women, and uniquely abled people. And with building these different situations and systems out, I work every day with shops, from mom and pop shops to the you know, Rivians and the top things that you see produced every day, to community centers and technical colleges, and work every day with people like these that go through these programs and have amazing outcomes. So would love to shed the light on some of the things that they've been doing, what these non-degree credentials have been able to do in their life, and maybe how we can improve some of these processes and how we can rally our governments and our policymakers, both federally and locally, to get behind these things, not just in programming, but also in providing the holistic support that we need all the way through the complete picture. So I want to start with our group. Can you start by telling us, what non-degree credentials you pursued, a little bit about, how you got there, what made you want to do it, and where you're from?
How you guys doing today? My name is Ajay Jones. I'm from Newark, New Jersey. Over the time, credentials that I obtained, OSHA 10 certification, also my OSHA 30, NCC certification, 4 hours flaggers training certification, 4 hours scaffold user and refresher certification, building maintenance certification, basic safety, tools, hand tools, and also visualization, and many others. Made me pursue these certifications. I've been going through construction for about 7 years. I was 15 years old. I wanted that. I have a real passion with my hands. I had a mentor that was just pushing me to do more, and the school that I went to for high school, it had put me in a position to take this pathway. With the time, I could continue to push myself and flourish into what I love to do. I feel like when you in a career, if you don't love what you do, then you're not gonna really flourish in it. I love what I do. I love working with my hands. I love going to somebody's house and visualize what I want to do, and then it comes out exactly what I like.
How you envision it? Yeah. So thank you. I want to unpack a little bit of that, and two things I want to come back to is your mentor, and then you talked about your high school being able to set you up to be able to explore these things and find out what you love, right? So where I went to school in St. Louis, we didn't have things like that, and I didn't really see too many mentors that looked like me. So unfortunately, like I said, I had kids and felonies before I was 16, right? And I made some wrong decisions, following the wrong people. How important is it to have a mentor and have some of those outlets to say, hey, I can do things with my hand. I am passionate about this. Tell me a little bit about that.
It was just the emotional and social support. Having a mentor who had already gone through the credential process gave me guidance, accountability, reassurance when challenges came up, basically. Generally, they pushed me. I had multiple mentors. I would be ashamed to say I had one. I had multiple mentors. The school that I went to, the program that I was in, it pushed me. Like, it pushed me to do more. And even over time, just like you said, you were a 2-time felon. I also after high school, I fell into some trouble. I got a felony, and that just didn't deter me. When I got out, I went straight to my high school. I wanted to apply for college. Went to go apply for multiple colleges. Started doing community college classes, and then after, I'm like, this is not really what I want to do. It's not really what I want to do. I didn't love it. I didn't enjoy it. So I focused on different career paths, trying to find my way back into the construction field. Found my way back into the construction field, and now I have a 5-year apprenticeship. I'm in a 5-year apprenticeship program for the carpentry school I went to. Um, Also, I started to own my own business, open my LLC.
Okay. All right. Providing more opportunities for people to come along the same pathway as you.
Exactly.
I want to pause there right there because we got another story of, resilience and a story of, finding your pathway that again has led to not only a great career, but some entrepreneurship as well. Is that right? All right. Well, tell us a little bit about your story.
Hello, my name is Ira Thomas, and I was introduced to UDC through a brother named by the name of Sabat. He had a nonprofit organization called Pillars of Success. So throughout my travels, I was in the transitional program. So one day he had two brothers by the name of Dr. Stephen Lee and Mr. Tashawn Lawson Bay to come up there and speak. So they were speaking about jobs and this, that, and the third, and different little non-credential degrees or learning pathways. So I asked him, can I speak to him after class? So he said, yeah. So Mr. Lee, I said, I really don't have a working mentality. Is it possible that y'all have some entrepreneurship? And he like, yeah, of course. So he introduced me to UDC, and through UDC, I took micro entrepreneurship. I passed that. I took food handler's license. I got my food handler certification. Then I do food and beverage. I passed food and beverage. Now I'm doing leasing for property management. A little backstory about me. I was incarcerated for 6 years and 7 months for possession of a firearm. While I was incarcerated, I was assaulted by the correctional officer, and I was placed in a coma. I was in the coma for 36 days. So right now I'm partially paralyzed on my left side. So it's just for me that, when I woke up out of the coma, all I remember was a book that I read years ago where Nelson Mandela had a quote. He said, "I never lose. Either I win or I learn." So with me, it was like, I still woke up, was like, I can't be a worker. Like, and there's no disrespect to nobody, but just getting a job and, I understand creating, but I want generational wealth. You understand? I want to leave some. I want to leave my legacy behind. I want to leave some for my family. So that's all.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Clap it up for that. So I want to point out, if we haven't been able to see it so far, that these opportunities are not just access to the middle class, but they're access far beyond that for people who don't traditionally have, intentional access into these things, right? So when you found out about your program, I want to talk about, this gentleman right here talked about awareness, right? And we talked about, how the perception of these programs are. Before we get to our third panelist, I want to talk about the awareness in the early access, which has to be important, right? For myself, if I had awareness of these careers and early access to understand I can get into engineering, I could design for Boeing, I could do all these different things, my pathway would have looked different at 15, right? And I would think that if you all maybe kind of share the same thing, if you had early access or you had early, awareness of these are opportunities for me. This is a business that I could run and own. How would that have changed the trajectory? Would you have, different things in your life right now? Do you think, would you have been on this pathway quicker?
I feel like me personally, I would have definitely been on the pathway quicker. I didn't have people to advocate for me. I didn't have people to push me in that right direction. I had to advocate for myself. So if I think if I had more of the moral support, I had a lot of tough love, and like in this career, you need that to flourish. So I feel like without that, I wouldn't be in the position that I'm in now. So I wouldn't say that I regret anything. I wouldn't say I regret anything because I wouldn't be who I am today. So yes, I would have loved if something would have been different, but at the same time, I love the way I am now.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
absolutely. Thank you for that. Early access and awareness and being able to get in earlier.
Okay, with me, I was just hard headed, basically. I had people that pointed me in the right direction, but I didn't listen. So I had to find out on my own. But if you ask me, I wouldn't have nothing no other way. because it made me to the person I am today. So nothing that I went through in my life, I would have different.
All right, I like that. Before we get to you, Mrs. Mashonda, we're going to get to Daniel. Daniel, can you hear me?
Good morning. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, while we work on Daniel's audio, Mrs. Smith, would you like to introduce yourself and your background and what you're doing while you're here?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mashonda Smith. I'm the Dean of the Workforce Development and Lifelong Learning Division at UDC. I do apologize for being late. I left out 2 hours early. And traffic is really bad. So please forgive me. But what's the question? What would you like to know?
We didn't get a brief introduction from you and your background with this work and what brings you here today.
Sure. So I would say, just like the gentleman here said, I followed my bliss. I didn't know you don't know where you're going when you're born. You really don't know. You have all of the pressures of the world, culture, family, traditions impressed upon you. But it's really important that we all understand that we have to follow our bliss. And as we do that, somehow I stumbled upon workforce development. In a nutshell, what I'll say is I started out having a deep, caring desire to support persons of color, all persons who experience marginalization and oppression. And so I knew I wanted to be a public servant. What does that mean? What does that mean today? Even more so. But bottom line, I got a lot of education. And I received a master's in public administration, focusing on program development, being able to go into government programs and making sure that we are using the taxpayers' dollars with fidelity. And it means something to me to this day. It meant something to me as a child. Long story short, I had a great opportunity to provide youth programs in the district. I am a native Washingtonian who's also moved around a bit, but I was able to start a business. I realized the need for youth development and competent, strong professionals was necessary. So I went and got more education and got a master's in clinical community counseling. That led me to stumble upon human development. And I found one passion. There are many. I found one passion. That passion led me to being able to intern at a juvenile detention center in the area. And I learned that working with the youth in the detention center, one of the things that was never talked about much was non-traditional career paths. It was not, it's always been there. It's always been there. It's nothing new. However, it just seemed to be a really great area to really support the young men I was working with. I then decided to focus in on workforce development. So I will say this, and then I'll shut up. When I was working on my dissertation, and I went to Washington State University. I was the only first African-American in this program. And I presented thank you. I wanted to study the school to prison pipeline. Bottom line, the committee said no, okay? And I walked away going through a lot socially, emotionally as well. And someone pulled me aside and said, look, what is it about the school to prison pipeline that you want to change, that you want to solve, that needs to be resolved? And he said, look, I'm gonna give you some time, go think about it for a few weeks, come back, let's see what we can do. I said, I don't need to go anywhere. I know the answer. I said, work. It's work. Everybody needs gainful employment, opportunities, and this is the workforce development is the tide that lifts all boats.
Yes.
All boats. And from that point on, the passion was ignited. And I studied it fervently, and I've brought it to all the work that I've done since, with directly being able to interact with students in these programs, doing everything to deliver and implement evidence-based programs, culturally responsive programs, and programs where the staff understand the depth, the holistic view of how our students come in and also how they're going to leave.
Thank you for bringing that to us today as well. Thank you for your experience, your time, and your passion. And speaking of time, we have one more question I really wanted to get to, given the state of the United States that we're living in right now, right? So we have a lot of people that are designing programs, that are working alongside programs. I myself run 4 training centers in Chicago, one in Baltimore, building one in Detroit and building one in Philly this year. And we want to know from you all how we can make these programs that we're associated with or aligned with better. As we launch, we want to make sure that we're, not leaving any gaps or any holes. And while we have y'all here, I'd like to close with anything that you can say would have helped you along your way, that we could have, or your program could have added to make sure that you were as successful as you could have been? Or is there anything looking back on there that you'd say, me prior to the program, the future me that might be going through this program, here are some things that can make their experience better and more robust? Anybody? Yeah. How do you want to go?
Can I
feel like
can-
personally, with the credential program that I had been a part of, it was, I'm gonna say, fabrication. It was told to me that once I leave a program, once I finish completing a program, that employment will be ready for me at the post-secondary. So I've been through many different programs and only found one that actually stood on the word. I couldn't. A lot of these programs, a lot of these employers, they look for experience.
Mm-hmm.
They look for experience. I can get a credential. Today, and I apply for a job tomorrow, but I won't get the job because I don't have the experience. These people will put you in a place where you could sit in the classroom, you could learn these different things, but you don't have the training, you don't have the necessary access to
the hands-on.
do what you gotta do.
Okay.
So I only been to one program that actually put me in a hands-on field, whereas I know what I'm doing with my hands. I know exactly what I'm doing to finish this goal. And now when I actually do go to this employer, I have the proof to.
So hands-on support and support with job placement after the program, industry connections.
Well, with me, like I said, I think that everything I'm big on entrepreneurship. So like I just no disrespect to nobody, but getting a job to me, I refuse to do that because I feel as though that I got a mindset and a mentality to make generational wealth. So with me, I'm big on generational wealth and just creating ways for other individuals so they can feed their family, or they can feed their loved ones.
Brother, I need one favor from you. Don't ever apologize again for having an entrepreneurial spirit, right? We need more Black business owners that look just like you. Everybody isn't built for that. You know what I'm saying? And you a warrior. You are definitely built for that. So stand on that. Have pride and have honor in that. We respect the fact that you're saying that, but respectfully, this is your calling, my dog. You know what I'm saying? Stand in there, my man. Thank you for your input. How have you maybe helped improve programs? Maybe what have you seen, yourself as a builder instead of somebody that's gone through some?
Yes, me.
No, Ms. Mashonda.
Well, definitely, I have seen the need and have done everything to address the need to create and establish better data and metrics, to understand the work that's being done, to also really truly working to implement evidence-based programs where there's theory, where the staff are able to
Test.
deliver programs and interact with the students and the lives of people that they're
Test one, two,
interacting
three.
with in a way that is highly professional, high quality, that's going to propel the individuals to the next level. Like I said before, our work is holistic. Okay, we are, working with particularly individuals and targeting individuals and groups who have barriers. Okay, and what does that mean? That's beyond monetary, that's beyond money, that's lived experience, that's trauma, that's mental health, that's
Test.
the lived experience of oppression and marginalization. And so I think as an administrator, it's really important that these workforce development programs are delivered with the highest of quality, that we really are able to measure what we're doing, to conceptualize the theory and, put theory into practice. And data is very important with that as well. And that guides the data, the theories. Thank you.
For anybody online or in the room, if you would like more from any one of these people, please reach out, network with them, pull more out of them, especially Mrs. Smith. If you're building these programs, you're a part of these programs, what kind of data is most important? Because we've been missing a lot of data, right? Or we've been collecting the wrong stuff. Before we go, Daniel, do we got you?
Good morning. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Brother
Hello,
Daniel.
everybody.
Anything
all right.
about what we talked about today, please share. Take us home.
All right. Good morning, everybody. I apologize once again for not being able to show up in person today. My name is Daniel. I'm 19 years old. I'm a student at the Community College of Philadelphia. I've been involved in two non-degree credential programs in the past. The first is the Advanced Technology Technician Training Program, which is an 8-month industry-focused program that introduced me to the field of biomanufacturing and bioinformatics, while also connecting me with several different industry professionals for research opportunities and internship opportunities. My second program was the Aseptic Technician Training Program that I did for 7 weeks, where I accumulated over 250 research hours, as well as became more well-versed in aseptic techniques that prepared me for the biotechnology field. And in terms of the motivation as to why I seeked out those non-degree credential programs is that I am a first-generation low-income African-American living in the nation. So I wanted to really just figure out different pathways that I could rely on that didn't necessarily have to be a degree, that could pretty much like serve as a foundation for my success. And these non-degree programs were examples of those. I did research, and I went out there and I was proactive to being involved with them. So I've enjoyed the experience. The connections that I had in both programs have been incredibly valuable. It served as good character growth. I was able to get a lot of mentors from both programs that I still regularly keep in contact with, and I've done a couple of research and internship opportunities from those programs. So I'm grateful to the establishment of those non-degree programs, and it's something that I've been advocating to with my school community to be more involved in, because it's important that we have kind of like a foundation that they can rely on that doesn't require them to spend time at a college. So that's a little bit of my background for that. Is
All right, Daniel,
any
thank
other-
you, my friend.
Yeah.
So we got about 10 more minutes. I just saw, thank goodness. Don't look at your schedules. But I love to open it up to any Q&A that we have for our panel, or for me too, anybody that's up here. And if we don't have any questions, I'm going to ask a couple more of them, and then we'll get their closing thoughts. So do we have our floating microphone person? All right.
Okay. I just had a quick question about advisement and how we get students into different pathways. It's not lost on me, and I'm thankful that there are a number of Black men who are on the panel today, but Black women generally are relegated to apprenticeships and different programs that are very low wage. So things like LPNs, things in healthcare, phlebotomists, things like that. So I'm curious if there's a way to try to encourage more participation for women in high growth and high pay sectors, and how you can go about doing that, training and increasing that access.
I would.
Anyone who runs a program.
Okay, yeah. So I'm manufacturing, right? So we're talking 3D design, 3D printing, CNC, careers that have traditionally been for white males, right? So we've got a tough time getting Black people, period, in here. But even more so, we're struggling with women, right? Where they're only about 13% of the industry, and even more so, they're more represented in office positions, right? But advanced manufacturing right now is a career multiplier. So every one job that's created in advanced manufacturing, 7 to 11 auxiliary jobs are created to support that one position. So we're looking at an industry that can turn whole zip codes around pretty quickly, right? So what I've seen that we've been doing at my training centers is Black women are the instructors, right? Black women are who we send out into the community, because we've got a double-edged sword. We got to not only say, hey, we don't have Black people, but then we don't have women in these traditionally male-dominated careers. So not only having ambassadors of the people that we want to see speaking the language that they need to hear, but then also creating support groups and holistic services that are, specifically for Black women in generally male white dominated spaces, so that they're not only getting these jobs, but they're retaining, and then they become the hiring manager in 5 years. They become the HR department, and we get that change from the inside as well as representation at the same time. And that's just a manufacturing perspective.
Okay, so I would say specifically at workforce development at UDC, we actually have a higher percentage of females, students, instructors, and it's really been interesting to watch our construction pathway grow since we became NCCER accredited. We have seen about a 10% increase in a year of more women coming into the training programs. And I mean, they are serious. It's a running joke, I guess, and I don't know if it should be, but everyone's the males in the program say, we're just trying to keep up with the women. Yeah. The women come in and they want guidance and direction, definitely much more. And that direction is just helping them to do more educational planning. Okay. And I don't like to say academic advising, because sometimes people think that's just college. That's just universities. So it's really educational planning. It's looking towards universities, but at all other opportunities that are out there. And I would say that the women are also demonstrating a strong interest and pattern. We've had 2 or maybe 3 semesters of the new program. And I would say about 2 or 3 young women have moved on to apprenticeship programs.
So we have a question from our Zoom. So for the panelists, can you share what internships or other employment opportunities you pursued since beginning or completing your credential program? That's question 1. And then the second question is, what's distinct about navigating employment as a Black worker in your industry? And we can start with Danny.
All right. Can everybody hear me once again?
Yeah.
All right. So in terms of internships that I've pursued, so I've done 2 internships from the 2 mentors that I was able to have from the non-degree credential programs that I was a part of. The first was a nanotechnology internship with my mentor. We were a cohort of 25 students. The second internship was an independent research laboratory with my second mentor, which was a cohort of 57 students. The distinction about navigating the employment pathway as a Black worker is how little representation of us Black folks in general are in those spaces. I could count with just one finger the amount of like people that looked like me were in both internships that I was a part of. And I think that it's incredibly important that we as Black folk people see that we have the ability and the full capability to be a part of those environments, to be able to share our voices, to share our experiences, our expertise in those environments. We are more than enough to advocate for ourselves in spaces like that. And we need to be more represented in those spaces because I'm a prime example of just of being able to advocate for myself in those spaces and being able to share and be on equal footing with just as much as everyone else. Um, so is distinct in essence of there's not a lot of people that look like me because maybe they feel like it might not be the best space for them, but based on my personal experience, I feel that we are more than capable of being able to excel and succeed in spaces like those, despite the prejudice that we may feel at times. So.
All right.
I could also answer that question. I was in a cohort of about 5 people. It was set up for it was designed for 50 people to sign up. 10 people got accepted. Only 5 people came to class. I was one of those 5. Out of the 5, only 2 of us was Black. Out of the whole school, I seen about maybe 3 other Black workers that was training there. Everybody else was other descent, so it was a little uncomfortable for me, but I had to get comfortable for the simple fact I wanted them to know that I'm meant to be here. So throughout that little program, that was for building maintenance specifically, and specifically it was for general carpentry, drop ceilings, flooring, sheetrock, everything general carpentry. And to answer that second question, the reason why I joined the Joint Center in the first place was because if you gotta when you ride through residential streets, when you ride through highways and they doing construction, it's not likely that you will see a Black worker. And that was a real big thing to me. So I had brought up to my mentor that was at the facility at the St. Carpentry facility, and I'm like, I feel like we need to add on more. We need to add on more Black workers. We need to add on more to the table for the simple fact I never see as many Black workers as I want to. Is in this one facility it's only 5 of us, so that's a big thing for me. And it's not that these Black workers don't want to obtain these credentials. They not being in a position to go do that. They're not getting the education. People not telling them about the different opportunity that's out here.
That early access and awareness that we talked about earlier.
There's so many different opportunities outside that Black people could really get into, but they not getting the right knowledge.
Yes,
And
I'm going to add some perspective to that because we got short time. Your path is completely different, right? And you said internships are probably not for me after you got a little taste of it, right? And you said, I'm going to go into entrepreneurship. So tell us a little bit about answering that question. Tell us about how your pathway was different, because in these 21st century careers, we're not only not well represented as workers, but also as owners, right?
Okay, so with me, when I first got into micro entrepreneurship, I had a mindset because I want to start a transitional program, and anybody that's in my transitional program get free physical therapy. But the transitional program is only going to be for the handicapped. So anybody that's in my program is going to get free physical therapy Monday through Friday. So I got the micro entrepreneurship with the food handlers and the food beverage. I want to start my own food truck. So with that, I just want to create opportunities for other individuals, and hopefully they can create opportunities because way leads on the way.
Oh man, that was heavy. And do you feel that sense of pride and that sense of duty? I think not just from us on stage, but even my man here and Mrs. Smith, and some of y'all out there. It sounds like being a mentor matters, right? And coming back after we've been through these programs, nobody told you, hey man, you could hire people with doing these jobs. Nobody told you, hey, you see that we need a need, go back and start helping and start training people as well. So I want to thank y'all for that. Is there any last question that we have for our panel?
I will pass the mic.
All right.
Just thank you to everybody for taking time out of your day, sitting on stage and sharing your stories with us. My question is, what kind of information was helpful in helping you make a decision? Or what kind of information do you wish that you'd had earlier that would have been helpful and help you make a decision about what kind of education you wanted to pursue?
Great question.
I wish that it was more people to tell me that it was more benefits out there for me, far as different opportunities in the workforce development. Not even just carpentry, but healthcare, technology, far as computers. I wish that I was more well versed in those roles, and people would put me in that position. I feel like if I didn't find that right high school, I went to Lee Charter School, and it was partnered with a company called Youth Build. If I didn't find this specific school, I wouldn't be here. If that school literally showed me that as a Black man, I don't have to just go with the statistics, but I can be more than what I dreamed of, and that's just my role right now.
Well, with me, basically, if I would have listened, because I got the best mother in the world, you know, and she always told me that don't follow my. She always told me don't follow my way, follow your own way. So you know, if I would have listened, I probably would have made better decisions.
So what was it that you heard that you said, okay, this program is for me? This sounds like something mama would have told me to go to.
Just micro entrepreneurship.
Okay, having the opportunity. Daniel, did you get the question, B-Dog?
Yeah, I got a question.
Okay.
So for me, I always embodied the mindset of you don't know what you don't know. And since I'm quite at a young age, I wanted to be more open-minded to pretty much anything, any resources I could take advantage of. Because I always thought that any experience would be helpful to my growth whatsoever. As a result, that was the mindset I used to go through the programs that I did. But if I were to give an advice, it would definitely just be more proactive and try to form more connections with, especially industry professionals and employers and stuff like that, because they, even if they don't have the resources or internships that I want, they still know someone else who has those opportunities. And simply by being connected, I can have access to those the resources and connections that they have as well. So just being proactive and just going as far as forming connections with those industry professionals more would definitely be more helpful going forward.
All right. Well, that is our time. I want to thank the Joint Center for prioritizing this work and providing this platform. And I want to thank everybody on this stage that shared their time and their experiences with us. And finally, I want to thank you all for the great questions and for being a fantastic audience. Remember, you can reach out to them while you're here. Please pick their brains. And thank you again. Appreciate y'all.
To begin this next session, please welcome Nikisha Ricks-Pettyjohn, Senior Fellow, Workforce Development, National Skills Coalition.
We have had a little slight change of plans. One of our panelists was unable to travel to DC, and the other is actually here but sick. So please send lots of well wishes because flying sucks when you don't feel well. So definitely hoping she feels better. I am here to moderate our session on lessons and learning from the field. So I have with me two awesome folks and leaders in the field of workforce education, workforce policy, state and city and local management. So we will be learning about what is happening on the ground and examples of where we've seen success in partnership with employers, with training programs and providers. And I'm super excited to be part of this conversation with you all today. So, we'll start with just some brief introductions about you and your work. So your official titles are impressive, but the real work goes way beyond what it says on a name tag or a business card for sure. So what's the most surprising or unofficial skill that you've really used and had to master in this field?
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Courtney Squirewell, and I have the opportunity to lead a multidisciplinary team. It's an innovation team through Bloomberg Center for Public Innovation. And what that means is we really set out to solve some of the most pressing challenges currently in the climate space. And the question around unofficial skills, when I thought about it, when I first started my career, I was under the assumption that it was all about degrees. So I started out in education. So I did just that. You know, I first had the elementary education degree, then I went back for leadership, then I went back for the ed spec. And like along the way of doing the PhD, I noticed that folks in my industry were getting jobs within leadership that didn't have the credentials. They didn't have the certifications. And I really had to take a moment to step back because I thought just having that, similar to what you all heard from the first panel, is like what we also experience having traditional degrees. So for me, I started to use strategy and started to build my social capital and really just networking. And I found it to be very beneficial to network inside of the places that I was employed, but also outside. And what that gave me was really a sense of how other teams were working. It allowed me to share some of the talents, the gifts, the strategies, the systems that I was using, but also learning with others, what others were using, and start to understand like those frameworks. And then I started to do something in terms of like volunteering. So whenever like there was an opportunity, either inside the spaces that I worked for or outside, I'm like, hey, can I come in and facilitate a human-centered design workshop? And it was those opportunities that started to open more doors for me. And literally coming from a teacher to working for Ford Motor Company Fund and their philanthropic arm to a think tank in the city of Detroit. And my career pathway has just been incredible once I really started to tap into that. And I'm actually here today because of some of those individuals that I met along the path. So I'll toss the baton.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming out on this rainy Wednesday. My name is Michelle Burris, and as Kayla said, I'm at the Century Foundation. We're about a 105-year-old think tank located right here in DC, also a native Washingtonian. And my job, I would say I am a student of Courtney. I run a cohort called Industry and Inclusion, and it is a national program designed to bolster the success of students and workers, particularly in manufacturing. And so we just wrapped up late last year where we worked in the city of Detroit, worked with Courtney, worked in Chicago, worked in Ohio to really think about how do we center equity when we think about talent development. I'm currently working now with Mississippi, Louisiana, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, and in Austin, Texas to do the same thing, working with JUCO to continue this work with that cohort as well. In terms of an unofficial or surprising skill, I'm going to steal from a professor at Coppin State University. His name is Dr. Ronald Williams, and he always says relational innovation and harnessing those people skills. And for me, that started also volunteering in the U.S. Peace Corps. I used to live in Rwanda, where I taught English, did computer work, and also HIV/AIDS prevention work. And I was one of the first Black volunteers there, struggled with being accepted based on my American identity, living in also a post-genocide and post-war torn country was also very challenging. And so I use my time there to connect with my students and teach them about racial diversity, how to infuse racially conscious strategies and that human-centered design, as Courtney mentioned, into this work. And so I would say that definitely has been an unofficial skill, really, but the most important skill, really being able to connect with people and to bring in that authenticity. So excited for the convo.
Thank you so much. And I just hear the connection in centering people, right? Not not employers, not corporations, not necessarily the mission, but the people, right? Like the people working in conjunction, in partnership alongside, to make sure that we are working with and not working on, right? For sure. And being like there for workers and playing our role for sure. And so what from your vantage point, and each of you are in pretty distinct roles, right? From your vantage point, what do you see are the barriers keeping workers, Black workers, from seeing some of the benefits of economic success with non-degree credentials? I'll pass it to Michelle first. Yeah.
All right, so as was already indicated, the absence of a unified data system is one of the biggest barriers that are preventing Black workers from getting into economic mobility. The collection of data for these non-degree credit systems can vary by state, and it can also vary at the institutional level. We have a status quo right now of separate and decentralized data, particularly at the federal level. And as a consequence, an assessment of these non-degree programs is very scattered and it's also inconclusive. And so when we think about the content, the duration, and also the format of these non-degree programs, they can be they can be online, they can be in person, the employers can sponsor them. It can be a little bit all over the place, and it's not well understood. So in fact, there's a researcher at Rutgers University, Michelle Van Noe, who studies non-degree credentials. And she cited in her recent report, 40% of community college students enroll in these non-credit degree programs, but the nickname is the hidden college, because it is so not well understood. And so when we think about who's fallen by the wayside in terms of the data, it's our Black and brown students, because they can be enrolling in credentials with low program quality. Maybe they are going into jobs with not a lot of mobility, and then they can either fare worse sometimes than their peers with a high school diploma, or they can be kind of in stagnant wages because now they also have the student debt from that non-degree program. We do have states that are trying to collect data on their own. Louisiana is one of them, a state that I'm working in, and shout out to Lumina for helping us support this work. And we have, but I do want to lay out two implications of this barrier. The first is the implication of the policy landscape. As Kayla eloquently said this morning, on July 4th of this year in the HR 1 bill, we had the passage of Workforce Pell. And as she said, now with the Pell Grant for short-term programs, you can apply that for programs that are anywhere between 8 and 15 weeks. So what this means is that short-term Pell is going to drastically change the workforce landscape. It has to be implemented beginning July 1st, I think, or July 4th of 2026, next year. Full authority is given to the governors to be able to implement short-term Pell. And so what this looks like, if you are a Black student who wants to get your CDL, you want to become an electrician, you want to become a power line worker, you can now apply the Pell Grant or your short-term Pell Grant to that program. However, not all short-term programs should get this investment because of the low return on investment and because of the low program quality. And so we need to identify the labor market returns and the credential quality when we think about which programs should be eligible for this type of grant. So we have our work cut out for us, and we need the data to be able to look at those outcomes. The next thing is an implication for Black workers. So I'm gonna kind of walk you through what this could look like. If you are a Black woman on a community college campus and you want to enroll in a non-credit course, and you look at this catalog of all the non-credit offerings, things that you may consider, how much is it gonna cost? Is it a flexible learning environment? Are the hours conducive to a full-time job or when you have to pick up your kids from childcare? And so because of that, maybe becoming a certified nursing assistant is the most appealing to you. Why? Auntie and grandma was a nurse, is very familiar. The hours of maybe learning to be a CNA is conducive to your schedule. Maybe you can be able to go to the class and go back and forth. But what the catalog does not tell you is that it is very difficult to go from being a certified nursing assistant to an RN. and that many people who are in these jobs, unfortunately, immigrant women and women of color, end up being in stagnant wages. And what it doesn't tell you is that your hours can also vary based on your clientele. And so those hours may not be flexible once you're in that career. And so we need hard data. We need the quantitative and we need the qualitative that we just got from the student panel to ensure that our Black workers and students are not being funneled into low-wage jobs or programs with low credential quality. Now, I'll point out the best case scenarios, not all negative. Let me talk about what we're doing about it. We want to make sure that Black workers and students can make well-informed decisions when they enter these programs. So my higher ed colleagues are here with me today too, and we are writing a report that will come out at the end of next month or early November titled 10 Actionable Steps that Governors Can Take to Get Workforce Pell Right. And so we are going to lay out here, if you are working in a state office and a governor's office, all the way from California to Maine, here's what you can do to get workforce Pell Right and to do right by Black workers. We want to use short-term Pell as an opportunity, and we also need accountability standards that are comparable to degree granting programs. So we're going to invoke these questions. How much does the credential pay that are aligned with how much does the job pay that are aligned with these credentials? How do we define what is high demand? Just because a job is high demand doesn't mean that it correlates with a high wage. Does the jobs align with this credential? Do they align with the living wage calculator that MIT has, which shows you how much you need to make to sustain a family of two, if you have 2 to 3 kids? We need to be able to look at that data. And also, what are the labor market outcomes? We need to fill in those missing data in that spreadsheet. How much can I make with this credential 6 months, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years after employment? We need to make sure that Black workers have a path and a future, and we need to add greater visibility to these credentials. So I'll just end with saying we also need to work in coalitions with the experts at the Joint Center, with everyone here, with you, Courtney, to ensure that Black students are enrolling in credentials of value with growth and potentials, because it's not only a policy imperative, but it's also a direction of our moral compass as we advocate for Black students and workers.
Mic drop. I was like, many followers, like, oh, that's a great one in my head. And you answered them all. You answered them all for sure. So thank you for that. I will have one. Data, right? Data. Every report I've ever written here, my last job, the one before that, the dissertation, everything has said something around 1, we need better data. 2, we need more data. And 3, we need data that is disaggregated by race, by gender, at the program level, so we can know how well programs are doing, so we can know how, like, whether or not Black folks are able to achieve parity, equity, et cetera, in these specific programs. How are you interpreting, and what warning or advice or even good news might you see in some of the changes happening around the Bureau for Labor Statistics, around the move of programs from the Department of Education to the Department of Labor, and around some of the limitations in the law banning the reporting of those metrics at the program level? What does that mean for all of the awesome recommendations you made?
Yeah, I think an opportunity, and just for some context, there's now like an interagency agreement going around with the Department of Commerce, Education, and Labor. I think an opportunity is we can end the silos. This is we need to work together. The reason why we're not making, or why it's challenging to make a lot of measurable change, is because we work too much in silos. And so we have WIOA over here, we can have another workforce program here, we have an apprenticeship here, and that makes it very difficult to be able to analyze the data and to be able to streamline, including like from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Sometimes we have different definitions, and so the Bureau of Labor Statistics, for example, has one definition of wages that can be totally different from your local workforce board. And so we need to be able to streamline that data to be able to look at it. Now, of course, some limitations, as we all know, the removal of DEI and being able to really analyze what's happening with Black workers and the experience. And so whether we're going to be able to look at zip codes, maybe whether we're going to be able to capture workers' experience from that qualitative lens or that storytelling lens. That's how we can still try to fill in the gaps. But it's definitely an opportunity now to have more streamlined data integration a part of this. And I'm excited about that. At the federal level, we see a push now to get 1 million apprentices, particularly in electricians. And so we know that apprenticeships are on the rise. People are embracing them more. It's a great way to do earn and learn. We need to make it easier for employers to be able to register for apprenticeships. It's a very bureaucratic process and difficult to register, and hopefully that does become easier. So definitely see some opportunities, even in the midst of these challenges.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Transitioning over to Courtney. So our report stresses the need for employer investment and skin in the game. What's the most effective way you've seen employers move from passive partners and advisors to active partners who invest in, shape, and hire from non-degree programs?
Yeah, so for that one, I have a few really good examples, and it's definitely skin in the game, right? It's all about access and opportunity, like some of the terms that just keep coming up today during the discussion, during the report. So right now, and I'm going to talk about what's happening in my region, and this is actually happening everywhere. Like there's a big push for really upgrading homes, right? To making them more energy efficient. And the whole cause around it is because families are what you call energy burden, where they're spending 6% or more of their income on their utility bills. So families are having to make the choice of feeding their children or keeping their lights and their water on. So in Michigan, there is this big act around and funding to get over, I believe, 15 million homes updated. And what that's caused is this shortage in workforce. And everyone is trying to figure out how to get contractors and looking to entrepreneurs who understand weatherization and going into homes to do the energy efficiency assessments. And there's a big gap. So DTE, which is the utility company that services Southeast Michigan, and Walker Miller Energy, which is a woman and Black woman led business, they've come together to create an energy efficiency academy. And the goal is to really fill this gap. And it's a really good example because, for one, both companies are coming together to develop the curriculum. They're going to be hiring directly from within, and they're looking for local talent to bring in, to train, upskill, and then ultimately help with this gap that we're noticing throughout the region. Currently, homes that are facing these challenges are calling some of the agencies that have funding. There's like an 18-month or longer wait list. So it's just not effective unless we start bringing more academies and accelerators to assist. Another example, which was mentioned earlier, was the SEED program out of Adidas. I think it's a really good example, especially in the industry. And there's data around it that there are only 3% of Blacks in the design space because of, again, access and opportunity. There are a lot of designers or aspiring designers that would love to go into the field of design. However, families are unaware of the opportunities that come from that. And data showed this through ethnographic research. And also, even to enter into an institution that teaches design, for one, design schools are very expensive. And in order to even be considered into a design school, you've had to have gone to a school that focused on design in high school so that you can have started building your portfolio, because you will not be accepted into one of these universities. And then even furthermore, even if you are accepted into one of the lower ranking universities or design schools, most industry leaders are not pulling their talent from those schools that have higher numbers of minorities. And again, there's only 3% in that. So Adidas saw that disparity and they created this program. Jessica and Sharice created this amazing curriculum, and it's for BIPOC women, and it's a 2-year program. It's paid, And again, it's really to take away any barriers that these women are facing to allow them to come in. You don't need a portfolio. You don't need any design. Literally, they're like, if you can draw a straight line, but then have like the aspirations to be a designer, we can work with you. And through that 2-year program, they don't just stick with the actual industrial design, but they take them throughout the whole business of what that looks like, all the way to product development and sales and marketing. It works because it's a culture within Adidas. I've seen other companies aspire to do it, but especially in a design space where it's white male, even when they're bringing in credentialed staff to assist, it's just not a comfortable environment. And studies have also backed that up, where people have really just opted out because the culture is so bad. Even those that have the certifications or the degrees to be there, it's not a warm and fuzzy culture despite like the talent. So that's a really good example. And not only that, are they skilling? They're hiring from within, and they're placing them on really big projects. Black Panther is an example. All of the apparel that you saw that was Adidas, the Lexus design, interior and exterior, came directly from the SEED program. And then finally, University of Michigan is opening a Center for Innovation in the city of Detroit. And the goal is to bring innovators that are currently enrolled in their programs to come and work on some of the latest technologies. Detroit is really working towards being like the next mobility and tech hub. And a lot of folks are putting money in. But the great thing is the university also seeing and noticing that this is an area for them to play, which is also a great idea because it brings credibility to have a credential or a certification from a well-known accredited university just brings much more meat to that certification. So not only are they about to open this center in 2027, but they're really being intentional about how they're creating these credential programs by going out, hosting focus groups to really understand the gaps, the barriers, and they're talking to employers, they're talking to the people that would actually benefit, and just ensuring that they all have those skills needed.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I think that is such a great example. I know we had a question earlier about like, what are we defining? What's our official definition of non-degree credentials? And you just gave a wonderful example of like how that definition is growing. Like as we sit here, that definition is expanding. Yes, it's occupational licensure. Like, yes, it's certificates. Yes, it's apprenticeships, but they are everywhere, as Michelle said, right? So we've got universities with skin in the game. We've got employers with skin in the game like Adidas, and we're gonna have to do a really good job, a much better job of tracking and understanding and honestly like opening our arms to embrace all these different formats as long as it's working, right? Like that, it was what matters most to me for sure. So transitioning back to you, Michelle, your work spans city, county, and state level initiatives. Can you share an example of multi-stakeholder partnership that successfully aligned goals between industry, education, and government to create seamless pathways for Black workers?
Absolutely. Anyone from Ohio in here? No? Okay. So, all right. So I would like to elevate the work that's being done in Cleveland, Ohio by a nonprofit, and it's also a manufacturing extension partnership, and it's called Magnet. At Magnet, they have a early college, early career, I'll refer to it as ECEC program. And the first thing it does, it exposes Black youth to manufacturing in a state-of-the-art facility. It's an $18.5 million renovated facility. It then places these Black students while they're in high school into internships, and then they mentor these same students into full-time employment using industry partnerships in Cleveland. Regarding the labor market, just for some context, Ohio is the 4th largest manufacturing state in the nation in terms of jobs and economic output. And companies in Northeast Ohio, they need talent. And so Magnet is directly filling this need by having, like I said, a renovated facility. And guess where it is? It's in the middle of a Black community. It is across the street from apartments that are resided predominantly by Black workers and Black people. And so when you go on the premises, There's a playground for children to play. And then when you go inside, they have robots. And then you see Black youth and Black incumbent workers who are working on innovation. Regarding the education and the industry partnerships, the ECEC program, it was modeled after the German apprenticeship program where you split time in an internship and you also split time with classroom learning. Going back to the holistic approach, his name is Raheem Nichols, who leads the program. He has a parent night because we also have to change the perceptions of parents, of grandmas, aunties, so they know what their kids are doing. And so he brings parents in to learn about the machine learning and the technology that their kids are doing. Jordan interviewed Raheem last week, and he talked about there was a student, and he was getting ready to get put out of the home by his dad. He was a teenager. His dad came to parent night and saw that his kid was working at Lincoln Electric and saw the innovation that his son was doing, and he completely changed his mind. His son was able to live with him, and he has a deep admiration for all the great work that his son is doing. So the great thing about Magnet is that they don't wait until 12th grade. They start this work at 7th grade, bringing students to the facility. In closing, I want to quote, we have a workforce consultant named Nicholas Beadle. He ran a lot of this work at the DOL. And he said, either those human needs get solved or people don't get to work. We don't get people to work without those human needs. And so another thing that Magnet is doing, they have holistic transportation. So they're picking up kids, they have buses through funding to pick up kids from school, take them to the internship, take them to the Magnet facility, take them home. And lastly, for government partnerships, Magnet was also funded by the Department of Commerce for the Good Jobs Challenge, where they are upskilling people, particularly Black people, into manufacturing. They have already filled at least 3,000 jobs. And last, they also use storytelling to describe their impact. So Magnet was just profiled by CBS, and they uplifted the story of a Black woman, and she went from being formerly incarcerated to being a first-time homeowner and a supervisor on the plant at 56 years old. And so Drew and I have this new term. We have to use a K through grade model. It can't just be this group of people, that group of people, especially with AI. We have to bring everyone in on this. And so kudos to what Courtney has done in Detroit and what Magnet has done to be very intentional and authentic, because that's what it's going to take to be able to sustain and have successful multi-stakeholder partnerships.
I love K through grade. I've heard like cradle to career, but K through grade is hitting. It's hitting for sure. And I love the example that you gave a long time ago. I was an intern at the Lumina Foundation in Indianapolis, and we took a trip to El Paso, Texas, because they kept saying like they're getting it right and we want to know what is happening, because they had early college high schools, they had community college, they have El Paso Community College and the University of Texas at El Paso, all of whom were sharing data with one another and facilitating transfer, to the point where if a student was no longer enrolled in El Paso Community College and only enrolled at University of Texas at El Paso, once they got enough credits for any credential, UTEP would then call EPCC and say, hey, you should give them that credential now, right? Awarding even post-enrollment. And one of the things they said that stuck with me was like, we got tired of pointing fingers and winding up pointing at ourselves and saying like, oh, well, the students aren't prepared when they get here. And the school district saying, you prepare the students, right? And being really clear that like, we're all in this together because they are such an isolated community. And just I learned so much about that work, or learned so much about community in doing that work. So as we prepare to transition from this panel to our action lab for everybody here, I'd like you to share some inspiration on applying lessons from the field. We're about to dive deep into 5 forces shaping our future: the hostile climate around DEI, the rapid advancement of AI, the need for upskilling pathways, and new funding streams like short-term Pell. Considering these specific forces, what is the single most bold, actionable strategy you believe leaders in this room and online must champion to ensure the next decade of workforce development builds economic power and mobility for Black communities?
I'll start and then I'll let you wrap us up. So for me, it's all about coalition building and creating these clusters because, again, it has to take place within all of those structures from K through gray now, which I think is a really great way to put it. But again, once all of these groups are working together, there's another Build Back Better Regional Challenge grant winner is in Michigan. And the reason it's working is because it's bringing these unlikely clusters together. They're sharing stories, they're digging data in terms of like really identifying some of the root causes that are preventing Black and Brown and just those that traditionally are not in the areas to benefit from some of these high wage, high paying jobs and understanding those stories. And because of it, it's informing not only the employers, but the K-12 system, the post-grad, and then also the community colleges and the entrepreneurial programs that are taking place. And they're all being informed by a lot of those barriers that have been identified from those that are seeking these jobs in the first place. So I think creating those clusters, identifying those root causes directly from those that are impacted and those that are like experiencing it will then assist in informing the solution. So really just working together to co-create and solve.
Love that. I have 3 words. Reinvest in workers. Reinvest in workers. Yesterday I interviewed, her name is Sue Helfer. She's a former economist. She's an economist for formerly the Obama and Biden administration. And her quote was, in Germany, a worker is an investment. In the US, a worker is a cost. And so what we mean by that is, although the German system is not perfect, they see their workers as an investment. Whether their workers stay at the company or whether they leave a little bit longer, there's no regrets because they were able to upskill another worker. It is part of their national fabric. So what that means is that we're right now in a climate where 40% of federal workforce funding has been cut. We have to be more strategic and creative in how we leverage and sustain funding for workforce. What that can look like is, number one, advocating for more training dollars in WIOA, particularly in the individual training accounts, and also ensuring that the programs that we have in WIOA are family sustaining wages, are leading people on a path of mobility. We can scale apprenticeships as they do in Germany. We also need to connect short-term Pell with apprenticeships, and we can ask governors to give a priority to short-term programs that are connected with an apprenticeship learning. And ultimately, we need to ensure these programs lead to economic mobility. We need to make sure they're flexible, and if possible, is there a pathway to an associate's or a 4-year degree if that's what that student wants to pursue? And so last, we need to also braid federal, state, and philanthropic funding. As I mentioned, Magnet was able to acquire philanthropic funding to take all these kids to their internships, to the facilities. And so as we know, we need workers a part of our American national fabric. And an investment in Black workers is also an investment for our entire communities. So we have to work as a collective, as Courtney just said, to make sure that we don't go backwards in this current climate.
Thank you both. I'm going to see if there are any questions. We are right up at time, but happy to take a few for the panel before we transition.
My name is Charles, wonderful panel. You gave a great example about the magnet school. You opened by saying, we see a CNA program, it's not leading to an RN. Do you have any examples that are making that pathway to maybe an RN that started CNA?
I'm looking at my heart. Yeah. I don't think we do, right?
Yeah. And it's a little unfair because in my experience, I'm noticing there are too many dead ends that start with CNA. So I want to get educated who might be doing a really good job.
I'm more in the manufacturing space, but what I've seen in healthcare is that we have not seen any path from the CNA even to LPN. And as Tiara said earlier, even LPN is still very stagnant wages. And so these stepping stones need to be built. I can tell you some examples of what I've seen. You have state strategies where they are paying the tuition of students who are in nursing programs, and they're covering their student loan debt. And that is helping them to be able to go through those programs. I've seen that, but we still need to have these clear and economically mobile pathways, especially in healthcare, particularly because a lot of investments or healthcare is considered high demand in most states. So for example, in Louisiana, when they target their scholarships, healthcare is one of the 5 industries that are eligible for their state scholarship called the MJ Foster Program. And so if we want that money to really go far, we need to have better stackable pathways.
And if there is one more.
Good morning. I think still morning. I just was curious, as we're talking about the need for quality pathways, your thoughts on pathways that are focused on social value versus economic value. Obviously, we have needs in early childhood education, but we also know that the wages in those are not considered living wage. So any thoughts on how we might address something like that?
I'll say quickly, employer incentivizing employers. So for those jobs, just like CNA, early childhood educators that we need that are necessary but are low paying, can we add retirement credits? Can we make sure that they have a path to a great 401k or IRA, a Roth IRA? Can we do childcare subsidies? Can we add some extra comp days? So I think working directly with employers to incentivize in those sectors, that is so important, unfortunately extremely underpaid. So thinking about the employer incentives.
I know Courtney mentioned the Good Jobs Challenge. The department, you might be able to still find it. If not, let me know. We do have it. Many things from the last administration are no longer accessible, but the Department of Commerce issued a Good Jobs Challenge and had some awesome principles, I believe 8 principles of job quality. One of those is pay, but many of those are what Michelle mentioned, as well as the flexibility of your time, right? So in addition to wages, healthcare, advancement opportunities, also childcare benefits, flexibility around your scheduling, and more. And so I think if and when wages and earnings are not great, there are absolutely other trade-offs that can be made. Yeah. Thank you all.
Thank you for that insightful session. Now, to close out the day, please welcome back to the stage Dr. Kayla C. Elliott.
Also want to just say that I don't know about y'all, but there's many conferences that I leave and I'm activated, right? And then as soon as I hit the doors, life hits, right? And those connections and those notes go on the back end, right? And Joint Center has designed an action lab that we hope that everyone can make a self-commitment with first steps on how and what we need to do when we leave these rooms. So first, I just want to say, describe the kind of the activity that we're going to do today. So we're going to work together to produce 1 or 2 powerful, actionable items that can support Black learners and workers navigating the issues at hand. We're going to have 5 issues, and I'm just going to designate tables, if that's okay. All right, so I'm going to designate 5 tables around the issue items at hand. Again, if you're not at one of these tables, I'm going to ask you just to move around a little bit and join and introduce yourself, okay? And so the first table we're going to have is this table right here. This is going to be our anti-DEI table. And then this table in the far back, we're going to have that, if someone can raise their hands, yeah, that's going to be our AI table, right? The table right next to it, we're going to have it be our upskilling table. Right here with the gentleman with the nice red blazer, we're going to have this conversation be around short-term Pell. And then right here, so that means some people are going to have to move, right? We're going to talk about WIOA. And so again, at these tables, what we're going to ask you to do is first introduce yourself to each other, right? Get to know your neighbor. The hardest part will be selecting who will be a scribe and who 1, 2, 3, not it. And then again, we're going to work together to produce 1 or 2 powerful action items around the topics at hand that can support Black learners navigate those issues. Again, this is going to be our anti-DEI. This is going to be our AI. upskilling, short-term Pell, and WIOI. Once you get together, you're going to have around 10 minutes to brainstorm, and then I'm going to come in with part B of this activity. All right, we can start. Hey, everybody. It is some great conversations going on. I'm going to pull us back in, if that's okay. For the second part of our activity, I was walking around and I'm just hearing all the excitement and the ideas. And I want to join each table. So let me say that. So for second part of our activity, what we're going to do is we're going to ask each group with the remaining of the time to identify one of the most promising strategies that you discuss. And we want to make sure we're going to deepen that strategy, right? And so we want to make sure that that strategy encompasses at least two of the principles in the report. So we're going to look at those executive summaries again. And then we're going to ask the group to answer the following questions. What is the action? You should be able to describe that in one clear sentence, right? Also, what are the principles that connect to the selected strategy? Who needs to be involved? We can't do this work alone. So do we need employers, semiconductor industry, community colleges, CBOs, government agencies? And then one of my favorite parts of this activity is going to be, what is the realistic first step? What is one thing that each person in this room can make a commitment to do the next week, the next month, or before the end of the year to get this work started? So we're going to spend 10 more minutes together to discuss those again. Talking about that one promising strategy from the group and ensuring that it encompasses at least two of those principles outlined in our executive summary. We'll get started now. I'll come back and convene us.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, whichever you like. So what are you thinking? There's sure. Yeah, I think it's just hard. So I do think the last one versus learning financial skills. Providing creative training, about the I think that's where. Yeah, I think that's where we. Well, we're that word. Oh, so yeah. That's kind of work back. Yeah. So that sounds like a good first step. So essentially that we sort of have to figure out that would be different, like the training. That was one. I mean, so we changed the name to that. So collaboration, definitely I think yes. And there you go, still builds you.
Yeah, it's still spill like.
So you think like this is so number has navigating data accounts and house accountability.
Here's the explanation of the legal document.
Basically like help identify. Like people that are. That we're trying to.
Survivors. Yes, this week. I was reporting the entire class in the government of Texas. Professionally speak by.
So that was my next question. As a strategy, as you kind of alluded to, like when federal funding or the fear of federal funding gets the program there, what statement or strategy to say, hey, state, fill in this gap? But it sounds like specifically in Texas, state pays all the money. You know what I'm saying? And then at the higher education level, it seems like even though they might be a state institution, they're so afraid of federal dollars being full of this. So.
So thinking about engagement, like I think a lot of community churches, right? Ohio State has the last one as well. Yes, they are apart from those nonprofits, but the ones that are not associated. So I would definitely think our professional tutoring services that might be like student support specific and kind of like talk about all these things on the ordinance to have all these people invested in state because I think nonprofits goes in building like that because that allows that to build the issues on and I have the LS of the doors that also so it's a whole problem. It's all that's good. That's right. Let me not bring this up. You're right. You're right. Let's get it.
No, that sounds like an accident.
No, that's. We're not gonna do it directly, but we can.
Yeah. And I think another good thing would be maybe like showing those nonprofits the state of what we're dealing with and then the role that they can play and maybe some allies of that's practices. This is why it's strategic for it to be y'all and not
okay, so that
the plan.
And I would say that's our first step, like right now. First part around like marketing, like who is interested in this particular program. And of course we have members, but a lot of information like that outside of because it's not just focused on NW, it's focused on the and so making sure that we're building
Yeah, and a lot of the nonprofits naturally are working in the community anyway,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Especially the big ones like Community and 100 Black Men and stuff like that. So using them too as that first line of communication when we talk about language and like what was it that y'all heard that made you be a part of this? There's more than just finances that we can pull nonprofits, but their community connections and their language connections. So.
I think that's like I'm not like our more inclined to get off with our right. I think some of those training programs, programs like they care regardless of they're not affected by federal funding. So how can you sharing staff to fill in that gap maybe they're not
Now, one thing that I do think personally I struggle with is all of these things are true. But it's unfortunate that again, we as the afflicted community have to figure out how we can community support these programs that we are already afflicted because they weren't supported in the first place. So it's like, unfortunately the answers that we have continue to be, we gotta get together and put this thing on our back again. And we're already burdened with all the years having to be there. So somehow, eventually, nourishing, right, exactly. And it's like somehow we got a conversation in the burden to say industry, government is not always on us to save the shit. You know what I'm saying? And eventually, we're doing, but how much saving ourselves do we have to do? Like y'all keep pointing the finger at us, like y'all not saving yourselves right. Pull yourself out. Ain't no resource, right? Or as soon as we get access, they say, man. Like DEI, put it back out. Not save yourself again. You know what I'm saying? So it's good that we're having these conversations, but eventually it's like, what these conversations? Like, why is this always the conversation? You know?
Hey guys, I'm gonna pull us back in. It was some good conversation. I think I came in on someone asking, like, when does this conversation stop, right? Like these issues, right? Which was really good. Now we get to see who lost in 1, 2, 3, not it, right? So what I'm gonna ask is each group to report out on their strategy, their commitments, and how it aligns to those 5 principles. And so I'll start with our anti-DEI group.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kyla. I'm a policy analyst at EdTrust, and I was at the anti-DEI table. We had a very complicated discussion. I would put our action in probably 2 categories. The first one was really focusing on how we can create proxies to other student populations that hit at maybe Black and Brown students. We talked about student parents, justice impacted, and just some other groups that tend to already be disproportionately Black and Brown and can allow us to still meet their needs in an era where messaging and communication is super important. And who needs to be involved? Everyone. Everyone should look at the way they think about students, how they can expand it. We also talked about how student parents have a lot of bipartisan support right now. So it's a great opportunity to really get involved with all parties and really allow for advocacy to be effective. The second one that we talked about was figuring out who can fill the gap in these training programs or 4 years that have those anti-DEI programs removed. We talked a bit about like nonprofits, alum, but we also emphasize ways that we can find for employers and people who aren't themselves afflicted by the work to also do the work and not placing that burden on those marginalized communities who are dealing with the effects and the consequences of anti-DEI, but pushing that to the groups who benefit the most. And like we said, can find us as an investment and not just as a cost. And I think that was everything.
Yeah, that was good. I kept snooping over there. It was a really good conversation. All right, our AI table.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Jalea Taylor, and I'm the Director of Policy and Technology for the National Council of Negro Women. So what I'm going to talk about also relates to some of the work that we're doing, but we're talking about basically the action as far as community organizations or civil rights organizations can have something what we called AI literacy workshops and AI literacy programs. So at NCNW, we are launching our digital literacy program in November. And it's called Wired to Win, but it's basically around these same principles. You're going to help me with the All right, so we said it addresses learner needs and financial realities because it's a free program. Google and Amazon and Microsoft are all working together to help us with the program. And number 3, for the successful workforce development collaboration, we obviously are collaborating with technology companies. We're collaborating with professors that helped us, really develop our content and our information for our learners, navigating data challenges and accountability. We took into account that, before we even start talking about AI, we have to get to the basics and foundations of technology because a lot of NCNW members, they are a lot older women. Some of them don't know how to work Zoom. And so we have to meet the learners where they are and make sure that they have the information that they need. And then, of course, implementing race-conscious strategies. Obviously, this is focused around Black women and their families. And so we're even collecting data around how these programs and this credential that they'll be getting from Google is going to impact their life. And, just making sure that we're collecting the data throughout the entire program. So that's it.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. I'm going to move over to our short-term Pell.
Just checking to make sure this works. So I'm Christine Barrow, Director of Post-Secondary Attainment with Education Strategy Group. Our table brainstormed a lot of really great ideas. We settled on the one that we would like to put forward is making sure that governors are informed on short-term Pell. So they need to really understand it, not just the words, but what is behind it. And what they need to be held accountable for and what they need to hold others accountable for. The principles that were reflected in there are the successful workforce development collaboration one for sure. We also talked about navigating data challenges and accountability because that's going to be something that's going to be really important in that particular strategy. Who needs to be involved? We talked about legislative staff, making sure that they're armed with the information, as well as others, identifying the stories from the ground for how this work can actually be impactful. So folks who have actually benefited from resources to attend and earn a short-term credential, share their stories. We heard some of them, some really great ones today. Share more stories like that so that governors know why this is so important. And CBOs can help with that. And we talked a little bit about the role of social media in all of the above. And then the realistic first step, our colleagues at New Century are about to publish a report. 10 essential, 10
essential actions that a governor, I think it was like 10 essential actions the governor can take.
Yes.
Yeah. I wrote it down.
That's our essential first step. So that's our essential first step. Somebody did bring up a really great point, and this is more like a second step, is we need more folks to write reports like that in case some governors don't want to read that report. They might want to read something from a different source.
You're right. Thank you for that. Thank you. And I love the legislator connection, right? A quote I got from a higher ed dean was, poor people get programs, rich people get policy. And so thinking about that concepts, right, is great, right? Like, because we see what happens. We had an abundance of programs and then they were stripped from us, right? And so policy gives us the guardrails and some of the foundation we need to change some of these systemic things. So last but not least, my favorite. WIOA. Let's go. Also, somebody didn't know 1, 2, 3, not it, huh? All right.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We had the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. And so we actually worked backwards to come up with our strategy. And let's see, our strategy would be to get the word out about to get the word out about and promoting national education awareness around WIOA. What is it? From all aspects, so we can see the big picture. The two principles that we selected was addressing.
For this, thank you.
All right.
Session now.
So I do just want to say before we break, thank you all. As we get lunch set up, if you can hear my voice, clap once. If you can hear my voice, clap twice. If you can hear my voice, clap 3 times. All right, former teachers in the room. All right. really just wanted to say thank you all so much for spending time with us, especially to our advisory board members, our panelists. Also want to recognize our funders who were in the room, Lumina Foundation, Casey Foundation, Charles, who was our technical assistance provider on our Youth Engagement Innovation Fund, all of our staff who made today happen, especially those who are no longer here. We definitely want to recognize the contributions of Justin Nally and Bianca DeCrest, our former team members, as well as our consultants, Mumi Foundation. We are super grateful for you all for spending time with us. Please keep an eye out for this report in the next few weeks and the next report on place-based industrial policy and those lessons learned in Raleigh and Phoenix later on this year. And I think that is about it. So please stick around for lunch and continue the conversation. Thank you.